Well, welcome. It's my pleasure and privilege to present to you this evening, and I know that some of you have already attended my sexual abuse training, so I want you to know that we appreciate the fact that you're even coming back to get a little more sexual abuse 101 is the way we call this. But I wanted to give you a little information about myself as we get started and also welcome you to the world of being a CASA. We definitely need you as volunteers for CASA. I have been with Fairfax County since I was 5 years old. I have been here now 28 years. As I say, I was 5 when I started. But during that time, as Fairfax County has grown, obviously the need for more social workers and other programs and CASA has certainly expanded in those many years. What we have found is that sexual abuse is everywhere. I mean, you can't pick up a newspaper or turn on a TV show or a movie or something that sexual abuse isn't right out there. When I started back in 1980 when I moved here, sexual abuse was not talked about as much. We had a lot of things happening that created the notion that it's okay to talk about it. Oprah Winfrey was one of our biggest supporters when she said, it's okay to ask questions, ask children, find out what's going on with them. So as the whole world of sexual abuse expanded, so did our services in Fairfax County. So that's what I'm going to be talking about tonight. A little bit about what is sexual abuse, how do we intervene with families, what role does a CASA play as we intervene with families, particularly those of sexual abuse. Okay? We call it Sexual Abuse 101, but basically what we want to talk about is what is sexual abuse. You all have your handouts, so you can follow along with me. But what we're talking about is a difference of power between an adult and a child, or an older child and an adult. An older child and a younger child. Basically, they're in a position of power or authority where the goal is sexual gratification or stimulation of the perpetrator. I mean, we're talking about anything from touching offenses, on top of clothes, underneath clothes, engaging in various kinds of sexual activities with kids, showing pornography to children, making pornography, any of those kinds of things. The latest adventure that we have found has been because of the internet. Everybody knows Dateline NBC To Catch a Predator series. Can you imagine the same guy coming back several times? Did you see those episodes where the guy shows up the next day? What we have found is the internet has really created a monster in the world of sexual abuse of children, and it's a really bad thing. So as a piece of working and knowing about what's happening from a CASA point of view, you also need to learn some things about how to educate your family, your friends, children within your realm of contact, because the internet is a real scary thing, and we're going to talk a little bit about that when we talk about pedophiles. But these people are out there, they're using the internet to get contact with children, and it happens within seconds. Within 3 or 4 exchanges of emails, these guys, just like on To Catch a Predator, these guys are connecting with kids, and bad things are happening right here in Fairfax. For those of you who might be watching this at future times, I will be making a lot of references to how things are in Fairfax County, our court system, our Commonwealth attorney. So I would encourage CASAs from any other jurisdiction to get to know all of the players in your system, whether it's the CPS folks, the police detectives, the Commonwealth attorneys, defense attorneys, judges. You need to know the climate of your particular jurisdiction, because within every jurisdiction, there's a different group of folks, and we hope that they're all very proactive in prosecuting and investigating child abuse. For the most part, they are, but you need to have a good working relationship with them so that we can all do as best job as we can to be successful. So as we're looking at sexual abuse, there's lots and lots of activities that add to what's happening within families. But basically, we're saying that 1 out of 4 girls, 1 out of 6 boys are sexually abused. So you figure the average classroom of children, the average group of people, there are people who are victims. There are people who, in fact, have been touched by sexual abuse. Perhaps it was, a loved one, your spouse, men, women, boys, girls, anybody could be sexually abused. As it says, sexual abuse really affects children differently at various developmental ages. So as a CASA, if you are working with a particular family in which sexual abuse was the primary thing, you may want to do some additional learning and reading about what should I be looking for, or what can I be keeping my eyes and ears open to figure out what behaviors I might expect from a child at a particular age, depending upon when they were abused and what age they were when it was disclosed. I want to look at some indicators of sexual abuse. All right, how do you know? What are you looking for? Are there things that jump right out at you? Are there kids that have sexual explicit play? Their artwork might be sexually explicit. I had one little girl who basically took one of her books at school, and in the cover of the book, she made these kinds of things. And her teacher went, what in the world are you doing in the front of your book? You know, you open up the book. She goes, well, that's what my mommy looks like. And in fact, I go to the house, the mom answers the door in this tank top. That's what I saw. She opened the door, and I'm like, oh my gosh. Well, the child had actually gone on to explain she knew about this because mom had had some sexual activities with the child. So I'm like, you never know how sexual abuse is going to come out. It could be that the child discloses because they're in a position to say, you know what, I don't want to do this stuff any longer. I don't want to have sex with my brother or my dad or my grandpa. One thing I do want to say is that many times as I give my presentation, I talk about sexual offenders saying he, but we have lots of women, lots of teenage girls that are sex offenders, so I don't want to insult the gentlemen of the audience. But the majority of our offenders that we investigate are males. But we do have female offenders. But it may be that the child just says, you know what, I don't want to have any sexual contact with that person. Teenagers, she may say, you know, I want to have sex with my boyfriend, not with my dad. Now, depending how old she is and what her situation is, we may say you shouldn't be having sex with anybody. But when kids get to be teenagers, they do what they do. And we hope that then families have educated them about safe sex and, you know, being responsible and those kinds of things. But many times kids make a conscious decision, I'm going to report. It may be, however, that all of these behaviors that you see are happening and somebody, hopefully a professional, teacher, counselor, doctor, someone that comes in contact with that child, says, what's going on with this kid? I see all these kinds of behaviors. It may be that they're having soiling or wetting problems. It may be that there's a new baby in the household, or it may be there's no new baby, they're being sexually abused. Kids that have excessive bathing, they're worried about their cleanliness. Many times children are also worried about their physical appearance. I had one young lady who gained an awful lot of weight, and what she told us was that if I got heavy, if I got fat, then my dad wouldn't like me anymore. That didn't stop. I had another young lady who would wear a one-piece bathing suit under her pajamas or under her nightgown, and her thought was, if I have enough clothes on, he can't get to me. That didn't stop either. We hope that if kids are having behavioral kinds of indicators, that somebody who is a mandated reporter would be one who might inquire, gee, what's going on? You're skipping school, you're having trouble, or you're hanging around school all the time. You always want to take the late bus even when there's not an activity. You're looking pretty sad. You come to work, you come to school a little earlier, you know, you're looking tired, you're hungry, you're not being at home, what's going on? And hopefully, you know, if the child is disclosed, then that mandated reporter will be one that would make the call to us. There's some other obvious things that would be indicators. Child with sexually transmitted diseases, children that are pregnant, other kinds of medical issues that could potentially be indicators. Pain, swelling, discharge, those kinds of things. We get a lot of calls, particularly on Sunday nights, after a child has visited the opposite parent. Fairfax Hospital gets so many little ones brought in because their bottom is red. Child comes home from visiting daddy, bottom is red, mom is like, eek, sexual abuse. Well, it could be that it's not sexual abuse at all. It could be that they didn't bathe, they didn't change their clothes, they potentially did take a bath, but the soap was different, the bubble bath caused irritation, the clothes were washed in a different kind of soap than they use at the other parent's house. It could be lots of different things. It could be they sat in a wet bathing suit all day. And nobody even thought, uh-oh, it could be that. Particularly when there's some disputes about custody or visitation or the other things that separated or divorced couples worry about. You know, the money things many times translates into, gee, I wish you weren't in my life. I wish you didn't have to visit that child anymore. So, you know, you really have to be conscious of any other things that could be ruled out that, you know, that wouldn't be sexual abuse. So for those who have been in this training before, I want you to help your partner or help your neighbor and take out a piece of paper. You can even use the back side of this if you want. But I want you to think about your last sexual experience. Uh-oh. It could be something that happened this morning. It could be something that was wonderful, romantic, candles, wine, you know, music. It could be something that was really uncomfortable. Could have been something that happened on the metro this morning. Something like a telephone call that you got that was disturbing. All right? So I want you to take out a piece of paper. We have to have some interactive work here now. All right, and I want you to write down your last sexual experience, whatever it might be, good, bad, or indifferent. So who would like to go first? No. You don't want to share your last sexual experience? Why not?
She'll share.
Great.
I kissed my husband.
You kissed your husband. Was it wonderful?
Okay.
It's okay. There we go. Is that your husband? No? Okay, well. Anybody else? Did anybody have that kind of uh-oh feeling in their tummy when I even brought up the subject? Yeah. Why is that? Any notion?
It's private.
It is private. It's personal. It's not my business about your last sexual experience. Right? And you certainly don't want to share with the person sitting next to you, other than your kiss. That was okay. But think what we do to children. We walk into a class, a school, we pull them out of class, and we take them down to either the counselor's office or the principal's office, and we basically build rapport and do all the social work stuff. And then we are asking them, please tell me about your last sexual experience. That's what we're asking these children to tell us. It's personal. It's private. It's nobody's business. Now, if it's being sexually abused by someone very close to you, someone that you in fact may love, do you think you're going to have a hard time telling about it to a stranger? Absolutely. But that's basically what we're asking kids to do. All right. So as a part of that, we're going to have another exercise later that will help you have some skills so that you, in fact, can have that discussion with other people. All right. Going back, there's various reasons why children don't want to tell about sexual abuse, other than it being personal and private. Let's think about some reasons why kids would not want to share what's happened to them. Let's say they've never told anybody at all. Why wouldn't they want to tell?
They're scared to tell
They're scared. What would they be scared of?
the father or whoever's doing the abuse.
They may have threatened them. Why else wouldn't they tell?
Shame.
Shame, absolutely.
Being scared to sort of break up with family.
If they tell, their world is going to change. And offenders are very good at manipulating kids and telling them of all these tragic things that's going to happen. First off, who would believe you? You're just a kid. But if they do, things could happen to our family. I could go to jail, they tell the kids. And you certainly wouldn't want me to go to jail, because what would happen if the dad would go to jail? How would mom live? No money. You know? And what about the other kids? Their daddy wouldn't be here. If you tell, the younger kids may not have a father. Nobody there to help them. And what would mom do? You know? Can she raise the kids all by themselves, by herself? Some kids are threatened by things that might happen to them personally. Any notion of what would be the kind of threats that somebody might use against a child?
Punishment.
Punishment, absolutely. We've had families that threaten kids that they're going to hurt them physically, that they're going to send them somewhere. Many of our immigrant families, I'm going to send you back. You know, and many of our families have just gotten here. And what we're finding, particularly in Fairfax, is that many families come here in pieces. You know, mom will come, maybe dad will come, and then the remaining children stay back in their countries. And then one by one, the children join them. It may be, in fact, by the time the kids get here, they're teenagers. Mom may have left them when they were 4 and 5, and all of a sudden they're 14 and 15 and they're coming to the United States. They don't have the language. They certainly don't have the acculturation. But then what happens if mom, in fact, has remarried? And now there is a stepfather that they don't really know. They might have, you know, gone home to visit, and then now that the child has come to the United States, they're coming to join a family that could be their mother, a stepfather, and maybe some younger siblings. Very typical case for us. So what happens then when the stepfather then looks at the teenager and says, gosh, this is a beautiful young lady. She's not my child. In fact, I don't even know her. She just walked into my house and, she's my wife's child, but she's not mine. And, here she is running around, going from her bedroom to the bathroom and, always scantily clad, or maybe she don't even have any clothes on. And we only have one bathroom and we're sharing the bathroom and this and that. And I can't help but notice her. So why couldn't I have sex with her? She's not my kid. What's the big deal? That's what they tell us. So it becomes a real trick. If that child tells, she in fact might get sent back. And she in fact might be responsible. Her telling may in fact create the issues of who's going to pay the rent. Families are already working and working and working. Lots of things happen. And particularly for families that their immigration status may make it very difficult. In fact, once they would get charged or arrested, they may be deported. So again, there's no hope of that person being able to, be financially responsible for the family. All right. So there's lots of reasons why kids don't tell. Years ago, there was a case out in California, the McMartin Daycare Center. It was not a good scene for those of us in the child sexual abuse field at that point, but we learned a lot of lessons. We learned that we needed to do a better job of interviewing children. We need to take each case individually and not become clouded. And in fact, now when we have many victims, we do different social workers and different detectives so that we don't, have tunnel vision with things. But the McMartin daycare case also had some pretty scary things that happened with the kids. They took some of the pets of the daycare center and they killed the pets, like the hamsters and things like that. And they told the kids, if you tell, this is what we're going to do to your pets. And who wants their kitty or their puppy to get killed? So these kids, they were buttoned up. So there's lots of things that happen with kiddos. I want to talk a little bit about what in the world is going on in families that sets up the scenario for sexual abuse to happen. Sexual abuse happens everywhere. Every race, culture, ethnic background, socioeconomic. We have folks that have top security clearances at the State Department and Pentagon to, folks that are just new to this country that, are just struggling to get to know how to reside in the United States. So it's everywhere. We want to look at the various players within a family, the different roles. We have in the offender, and we're going to talk a little bit about the different kind of sex offenders, both fixated and regressed. And then obviously we have the victim who was manipulated or coerced into the act. And then we have the non-offending parent. And for those of you who have had a sexual abuse case or will have, you will hear me preach a million times over. The non-offending parent is the key to keeping children safe. So as a CASA volunteer, one of the things that I encourage you to do is really focus on that mother, particularly the mother. Could be a father, but particularly most times it is that non-offending parent. They are put in a really tough position, and we're going to talk about some of that. What's going on in families? Low self-esteem, absent of one parent from the house, family members sleeping together in bed. That's not to say that every family that sleeps together has sexual abuse. But I've had many situations where mom's on one side, dad's on the other side, and the kid is in the middle. Some dads say, well, I just rolled over and I was asleep and I thought it was my wife and here it was my daughter. So I began to have sex with her thinking it was my wife. Do you think you guys would make that mistake? You probably could tell the difference, right? Yeah. The judges don't buy it either. But we've had that. Or I was so drunk I didn't realize that it was my daughter and not my wife. Or was my son. No, we don't buy that either. Marital problems, alcoholism, isolation of the family, the role reversal. We've had lots of situations basically where the mom and daughter switch roles. Daughter is actively involved in household decisions. One family, the daughter and dad planned where they went on vacations, when they were going out to dinner, where they would go. You name it. I mean, she became the mom, and mom was basically out of the picture. She was having an affair with some construction guy that was remodeling the kitchen. She didn't want any parts of dad. Marital problems, there was alcohol involved. It would just set up a scenario. What about these guys? There's some characteristics of them. Immature, perhaps. They claimed it was that seductive kid. When she's 3 years old and she comes running out of the bathroom before bath time, how kids love to run around the house naked. You know what? She was asking for it. That's what she really wanted. She wanted me to have sex with her. That's why she was running around naked. How many are parents? When you take their clothes off, Isn't that fun? They just zip around the house and they're so excited. You know, does that mean they want to have sex? No, they're having fun. The air feels good as they're running around the house. Possible drug and alcohol involvement, but that's not the reason that people sexually abuse children. Poor impulse control. You know I shouldn't do it, but, well, maybe just this once. We had one gentleman who, after his daughter disclosed, he admitted, and he said, you know what, I just couldn't stop. And I knew after I got started that she kind of liked it, so I figured it was okay to do it because she did like it, in fact. Now, what gets real confusing is that our bodies respond physically to sexual contact. So if one is being touched or fondled, your body may respond. The offender may say, gee, she acts like she likes it, like she wants it. All right? So it's hard for a kid to control the physical reaction to things, but it's feeding into the cognitive distortion of the offender saying, ooh, she must want it. You know? And then, of course, we have the dads who say, well, if you do this, then I will give you special treats, special pleasures, you know, maybe money, maybe gifts, all of those things that then create that cycle that continues. But this one gentleman said, you know, yes, I did it. And he said, after I would sexually abuse her, I would feel really bad. I'd feel remorse. You know, I'd even pray. He said there was a picture in their household of Christ. And he said, I'd go to the picture and I'd look at Christ and say, please, please, please help me, stop me from sexually abusing my kid. But, you know, a month or two would go by and I couldn't stop. I had to do it again. And he said, I was really glad my child told because I couldn't stop it myself. The guys that are very interested in their daughter's social life. Now, could any of you check the virginity of a teenager and be able to tell for sure whether they've had sex? I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't have a degree, a medical degree. So as much as I know about female anatomy and hymens and all those things, I couldn't tell if somebody's a virgin or not. But we have lots of dads that are hell-bent on checking. When she comes home from that date, he's going to check her. And as he's checking her, he's basically sexually abusing her. Or he's so interested in where you are, not just the, you know, you got to check in all the safety reasons, but he wants to know, are you having sex with your boyfriend? If so, are you using condoms? How are you using them? We've had guys that, in fact, instead of saying, here's a pamphlet, a brochure, a book, or whatever, go off and figure out how to use a condom, they decide that they need to do a lesson in how to use a condom using their own genitalia. That's not how you teach children how to use a condom. And in fact, they use that as a ploy to then sexually abuse them, get the child to put the condoms on them, show them about erections, masturbation, the whole 9 yards. So those are some of the things that we hear from kids. What about moms? Many times they're passive, non-assertive. Many of our moms are victims, not all of them, but many of them are victims themselves. And with that, you also have to keep in mind the reaction of moms when confronted by the fact that their child has now disclosed sexual abuse. Moms will say what? I never told anyone, but I was a victim also. They also go on to say, well, you know, I told my mother, or I told my teacher, I told somebody, and nobody ever did anything for me. Some of them even say, you know, I'm okay. Look how good I turned out. Well, maybe you didn't turn out so good. You picked a man, you have a relationship with someone who's now sexually abusing your child. So in essence, we have two victims to deal with. And we understand that. So, you know, moms are the key, but they also are going through a lot on their own so that you may have to do some, we as social workers have to be cognizant of the fact that we have to do some work with moms to make